Hello, friends. This is Scott, and this is the second part of my Homestead year in review from July to December. First thing I did in July was I needed to get my chickens down to the homestead, and so I went on KSL and just bought a cheap old little coop and took off the pen that come with it and just stuck it inside the pen and brought my chickens down because that was a necessary component so I could take care of my coop in Salt Lake and start the tear down. Chickens loved it down here, though. They liked to let them right out, and they seemed right at home exploring. And the next morning, their first morning on the homestead, somebody laid me an egg. So, yeah, that was a rare occurrence. So, yeah, I knew that things were going to be okay as I fumbled the egg there. So, yeah, the chickens seemed to like it. Then I went and bought a load of bark, the dark bark, to make the raspberry area look much better. And as you see, the raspberries are doing good. And the chickens explored that area of the yard also. So they've got a pretty good area to check out. This is an omen for the future, always weeding the trees. And there's my elm tree in the pasture. And again, had to open up the rings several times this year and clean them out and then rewire them up and water the tree in, as the cows are always going after this tree. But I think I have a solution. The cows showed me the way. I created a new game. People, want to play different sports, racket sports, but I'm hitting cabbage moths with this electric fly swatter. So, yeah, created a new fun for me, easily entertained. Well, I need my garage cleaned because I'm going to be doing lots of projects and rest of the year. And so I got it all washed out and kind of semi-organized because I need to use this as a workshop for my, the next big project. But July showed me that bugs are terrible this year. These were my squash, and you see there's some squash bugs, all through here. So, yeah, they were a problem. And there are quite a few. As you see, there's some little eggs there at the bottom of that leaf. But, the squash bugs were a pain. But so were the flies. And so I had to go get a couple of fly traps. And as you see, I moved the fly trap around. But, I caught a few flies, as you see. I dumped this out numerous times, so I caught thousands of flies. Put one up by the house, too, by the deck, and caught a lot of flies there, too. So, yeah. Biggest problem, though, this year was the grasshoppers. And those are the potatoes that they kind of annihilated the tops on. Luckily, it didn't hurt the crop too bad. My chickens, I wish I would have had them here earlier, but they did get out here and chase some grasshoppers around and had a little success catching them. That's my chicken that died this year. That was the best catcher of flies. But the earwigs were terrible. And earwigs generally aren't that big of a problem unless you're growing like cabbages and broccolis because they just live in them. They don't eat the actual crop. They just get in there and it becomes real appetizing. So you got to soak all your vegetables to get these bugs out of them. And then the next bug I had issues with was, luckily I saw these because the wasps were in all my gates. Any little crevice in a gate, there were wasps there. So luckily I noticed that and I did not get stung. So that was a bonus. But again, every little hole there were wasps. So yeah, at least they're not yellow jackets anyway. But I moved my chickens down because my wife did not like my coop in the yard anymore, and she wanted me to make this less redneck of a backyard in Salt Lake City. So, yeah, I just tore this coop down with the thought of trying to save as much of these and salvageable materials and use them in the new coop down at the homestead. So, yeah, it took a couple weekends, and I was able to get this coop torn apart. And was able to, save some of the stuff, but toward the bottom there's just way too many nails. There was nothing to salvage down here, so I just cut it up. And I got down to the end. As you see here, I did have some salvage material there at the bottom of the screen, but all that other stuff is garbage. So I had to throw a lot of stuff away. So I did bring it down to the homestead, and I burnt a lot of that stuff. And I did have, some salvageable material, some plywood and some siding. So there's some there, and I had quite a few 2x4s, and that was my last load. And then I brought some wall brick down. I tore down a planting bed in Salt Lake because I need it down here. And there's some gravel that I dug up from my front yard, and I brought the wall brick back to the backyard to show you what my next project is that I need to complete before I'm ready for a chicken coop, is I need to put in a couple little retaining walls. So I used that rock and tamped it down for a base to hold that wall in. And I'm just going to build a wall so that I can make the planting beds longer on that side, plus have an area for to put the chicken coop. So I leveled across to build the other side of the wall and got those placed in. But again, I didn't have enough wall block this trip, so I did what I could do. Went to the big pile of rocks where I've been screening and brought those down. And at my Salt Lake residence, I put wood down around a wall, and it was a mistake because the wood broke down and the wall tipped over. So I wanted those rocks there to build that wall up and make sure it's sturdy. And then I screened some dirt and used the dirt to lock that wall in. Did a second trip of wall block, and I got both sides of the wall finished. And it looks pretty good, I think. So, yeah, it looks kind of like it's sticking out like a sore thumb, but it looks better when I bring in some dirt. But again, went back to the pile of rocks and went ahead and shored up that other side of the wall. So that wall's not going anywhere, I don't think. And we had a challenge to show you that it's not going anywhere. But there's the big pile of dirt that's now pretty flat that I've been removing dirt from for all these projects. And I screened a bunch out and I put it along this wall. And actually some of it I didn't even screen because it was the base layer, so I didn't worry about rocks at this point. But in August, we had the big flood down here, and a lot of my neighbors were devastated. Their whole basements were flooded, and it's pretty bad. But luckily for me, I did not get it that bad. Just had a couple inches of mud. And again, the mud did come into the house and did ruin a few property items, but it could have been much worse. I had this sidewalk that slopes down toward the house. Luckily, the storm came from the other direction, and I had no window wells in the other direction, so I did not get flooded out. About 9 inches of water, though, and there's a look at how much water fell in about 30 minutes. And, no damage, though. The walls held up to all that rain, so good. City did have some sandbags, and I went and grabbed a few just to, try to keep the dirt out of these drains until I get the formal draining system finished, and got it cleaned up pretty well. But as you see, these drains are not adequate. So I started digging down the side here because I need to put in a whole new drainage system with a kind of a channel drain, but I've got to go all the way around this wall, and the slope is not in my favor, so I got to dig pretty deep. So I did find some old Pioneer sewer pipe in there from original home that has been gone for a long time, and that's how far I got dug this year. And I took a lot of that dirt and I filled up some various areas in the pastures and the neighbor's pasture where the cows have kind of made holes. And I did screen some and brought it into here. And I want to level these beds out and make more planting beds, more longer planting beds. So, yeah, sometimes where there's a disaster, you get some raw materials. I did put in a strawberry bed and used a little bit of that screen soil also. And I got these transplants from the school garden. And I looked and I had a lot of shade in this yard, so I went ahead and cut a lot of these limbs down. And the reason I did it at this time was because the city had given me a dumpster to help clean up from the flood. So I took advantage of it. And again, sometimes a disaster happens and you can benefit a little bit from it. So I got rid of quite a bit of junk. So it was time now to build the coop. And there's my materials that I'd been able to salvage, some 2x4s and some plywood and siding. And I thought I had quite a bit here, but I did not have nearly enough to do everything. But I did have some old long 2x4s from the old greenhouse project, so I wanted to use those up and clean up this area. So, again, reuse is kind of what I'm all about down here. First I leveled the ground and started the framing of the coop. And my whole process here is to build half the coop and get it, all the way to finished flooring and siding, just so I could get it shoved into the back corner there. I didn't want it too heavy to not be able to move it myself. So again, I reclaimed plywood and siding, and I got the two sides that are going to be up against the pan in the wall, and I got those all painted, and it was light enough that I was able to move it into place. And then I went up, and I'm just doing a pitched roof, and got that framed in. And I built some nest boxes and a couple roofs there, perches. And I got the roof rafters in. I put in the hurricane straps because we do get windy down here. And so I went ahead and put those braces in and got the plywood on the roof, and I put a metal roof in. And I brought the drip edge from my old coop in Salt Lake and reused that. So, I didn't quite calculate exactly the right width, and so I needed to put a little extra drip edge just to keep it extend the roof so that it wasn't going to get any wetness on the siding. So, got it all sheeted in and then started the siding process, again, with as much of the raw materials that I had from Salt Lake as I could. Built a simple little door with a little bit of venting in it with hardware cloth, and put a light in and hooked the electricity up, just plugged it into the house. Started putting the siding up and doing a little bit of painting. And I didn't have quite enough siding. I thought I'd bought enough, but, weird shape. I was able to do most of it. with what I purchased at the local hardware store, but I had to piecemeal a few pieces. So yeah, it doesn't look the greatest, but yeah, I've got a few spots that are a little bit of an eyesore, but yeah, just painted everything white, so not a big deal. And again, this looks more like a tack shed, and I got those comments quite a bit, but that's good because if I ever move my coop, I'll just leave this one here and make it a shed. So, and I put in the heated water base, which is the critical element that I need to get done before winter hit, keep those chickens alive. Then I started tackling my compost bin problem along the sidewall there. It had lots of bugs and mice, so had to move those bins. First step was screening, and so I went through all that material that was in the 3-bin compost system, and then I put it in where I'm going to put the asparagus next year, and I moved the bin to the other side. And then I saw the tires, and there's a look inside the tires at how much the worms had worked that material down and the other insects, and so I was able to, I showed you I was able to, without killing myself, get these big old heavy tires moved. I just put them across the way. And yeah, I've got some material there to screen, and I did find a couple new friends, a couple salamanders, so that was kind of cool. Didn't know they were in the yard, and it was nice to see them. So, and that was all horse manure and cow manure last year that was in that worm bin, and yeah, it's all good stuff. Looks like dirt now, so I just went ahead and put that over there where the asparagus is going to go next year. And I found an old pallet from a friend, gave it to me, and I put all my chicken supplies in those barrels up along the coop. There's my tires and my 3-bin compost system. But yeah, you put anything up against the fence, you got problems with these two characters. So yeah, I'm going to be moving that compost bin area again. I did buy a new electric lawnmower, not knowing how I was going to like it, but here's a look at how it mowed. And again, the cows and the horses did wonders. And there's lots of nature's goodness still laying down in the pasture I'll be getting. This was right before I mowed, to kind of show you how it was before I mowed. Not much there, but the cows had a lot of fun. They were playing, and pushing each other around a little bit. I did put in a new blackberry bed, so I started like I do all my beds with cardboard. And then I screened soil, and I brought my blackberries that I propagated from my Solic garden and brought them down here and planted them. So yeah, I'll have some, get the blackberries going. Then I was fortunate to hear a tree service company in my neighborhood, and I got 2 truckloads. I had to buy them, so it wasn't cheap, but it was a pretty good deal for the amount of material that I would have had to spend if I would have purchased. I think it's approximately 20 cubic yards as a guesstimation from previous loads. But yeah, there's quite a bit of wood chips there. I'm just wondering how far those are going to go. And before I started using them, though, I needed to weed because I wanted to clean up the yard and get it weeded before I remulched, because again, wood chips are good for kind of a weed suppression for a lot of weeds. It's not bindweed, but a lot of the others. I cleaned up the side yard. But then, the end of October, we had a snow, and I wasn't sure whether this was going to lock us in for winter or not. I was a little disappointed that I hadn't accomplished a lot of stuff, but snow melted, it got warm again, and I was able to use all the wood chips. And here's a look at where I put them. I used them to mulch in all the berry bushes I had in the front. I used them to mulch all the beds on the south side of the yard. These are all the new planting beds I put in where I had the corn and some squashes, and I was able to mulch in the strawberry bed there, and the beans on the end there, that little raised area. That's where I had the green beans, and so all that was mulched in with that material. But that's not all. We were able to keep on swimming, and I was able to use some of the mulch to mulch in the garlic, fall planted garlic for the summer harvest next year. And I did elongate this planting bed, and I used wood chips on this to fill all this in. I didn't initially fill in the bottom because I thought I was going to get some more compost, but yeah, I didn't, so I went ahead and filled that in. I did where the old tomatoes were. I did where the old compost bins were. I put a little bit in the old chicken pan. And then as we scroll around here, I used quite a bit here for where I'm going to put the asparagus next year. And I was able to go all the way up the side with about 4 inches, all the way up the side of the house. So that's the north-facing side. That area's had plenty of compost and wood chips, so it should be very fertile. It's just a little bit shady. I got to figure that out, what I'm going to plant there. But yeah, I got it all the way around the front, so it looks a lot neater. And then that big mess of weeds, or bindweed I had on this area near the front door is all mulched in. So wood chips went a long ways. So then I went and collected a bunch of nature's goodness, 2 wheelbarrows out of the pasture, and that's the worm bin. And I loaded it up to feed them with the horse manure and the cow manure because the worms love that. And then I used dry leaves to insulate the tires and the worms, and put a top on it to keep the critters out of it. As you see, the two culprits there behind me. I did have enough leaves just to do half of the garden for what I didn't have wood chips for. And so I only had enough to do half. So I had a little piece of plastic and I decided to put that out, and that's where I'm going to plant the peas. Hopefully I can plant them a little sooner this year with that plastic there. And then the snow hit and locked us in. So that was all the basic gardening progress I could do, other than continue my leaf collection in Salt Lake because snow hadn't stuck. I got my hot compost bin ready, and I dumped a bunch of leaves and rings to prepare myself for next season's hot compost using my 3-bin system. And then guess who was in my business again? Yeah, I had given the cows a couple leaves or a bag of leaves, the day before. They didn't seem very interested in them, so I went ahead and put the rings there. But yeah, as soon as I filled the rings, they were all curious. They knocked them over. So yeah, that next day we had snow again. And here's the solution that the cows showed me, though. I went out to try to fix my fence, and I started to notice there's no weeds down there. And the tree's, perfectly protected with the way I did the wire cages. So I've got a new invention that I need to perfect to hopefully solve my weed problem in the pasture. Did get more bags of leaves, but not nearly what I'd hoped for. So I've got a little bit of left backup, but it's not going to last long in the whole composting process. So I'll get a few loads of hot compost, but yeah, it's going to be a struggle. Well, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you like what I accomplished at the homestead in 2024. And I'll be showing you another video of what all I picked in 2024, produce-wise, and I'm going to show you what the future holds in 2 separate videos. Well, thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you like what you see. Thank you.